When I think back to the times I've walked into a crowded room, my heart would start racing, my hands would feel clammy, and I couldn't help but wonder, does everyone notice how nervous I am? It's not that I didn't want to be there, but the thought of being judged, misunderstood, or simply not measuring up made everything feel unbearable. The funny thing is, social anxiety isn't about disliking people or avoiding social situations. It's about a deep internal fear of being exposed in the wrong way. Social anxiety isn't just shyness or introversion, and it's definitely not about preferring to be alone or avoiding small talk. It's a lot more complicated than that. It's an invisible struggle that often goes unnoticed by others. For me, it was that constant fear of being scrutinized, of saying or doing the wrong thing, of being perceived as awkward or different. I wanted to connect, but every time I tried, the fear of judgment would freeze me in my tracks. This constant mental loop, where my thoughts spiraled out of control, was exhausting. But how do I know if what I'm experiencing is social anxiety? Sometimes it's hard to tell because the signs can be subtle. It's not just about staying home or avoiding big events. It's the intense internal struggle, the overwhelming fear of rejection that can make even the simplest interactions feel like a major event. It's about wanting to be seen, but at the same time fearing that the very act of being seen will reveal something that others won't like. In fact, social anxiety isn't always obvious. It doesn't always look like trembling hands or stuttering speech. Sometimes it's hiding behind a smile, nodding along in conversation while your mind races with doubts. It's rehearsing your words in your head, only to feel like everything comes out wrong. It's replaying conversations over and over, wondering if you said something that made you sound weird. It's avoiding the phone, canceling plans or missing out on experiences because the fear of being judged is simply too much to bear. There's actually a scientific explanation behind it. Studies show that people with social anxiety often have an overactive amygdala part of the brain, responsible for processing fear. This means that harmless social cues, like someone glancing away or pausing mid-conversation, are perceived as threats, triggering an intense fear response. It's like living in a constant state of fight or flight for no real reason at all. So, how do you know if what you're feeling is social anxiety? You might feel like you're trapped between wanting to engage and fearing the judgment of others. You might cancel plans even though you want to go, or feel like your heart is pounding at the thought of a simple conversation. Understanding these signs is only the beginning. It's not about forcing the anxiety to disappear, but about learning to listen to what it's trying to tell you. Social anxiety doesn't define who you are. It simply reflects how deeply you long for safety and acceptance. When you start meeting that fear with awareness and compassion, something inside you begins to shift. You reclaim a bit more space, a bit more peace. And from that space, we can begin to explore why social anxiety takes hold in the first place. What happens in the mind and body that makes even simple moments feel so overwhelming? Social anxiety doesn't simply stem from shyness or introversion. It's a complex inner conflict between the longing for connection and the fear of being judged. For many of us, even small social moments, a meeting, a greeting, a group conversation, can feel like standing under a spotlight. Every movement feels exaggerated, every pause feels awkward, and every glance feels like silent evaluation. It's not that we dislike people, it's that our nervous system has learned to associate visibility with danger. When I walk into a room full of people, my body often reacts before my mind can catch up. My chest tightens, my palms sweat, and my thoughts start to spiral. What if I say something stupid? What if I don't fit in? What if they notice how uncomfortable I am? These looping thoughts aren't weakness or insecurity. They're the brain's way of trying to keep me safe. Psychologists call this self-focused attention, when your awareness turns inward, constantly monitoring how you appear rather than experiencing what's actually happening. Science explains this phenomenon well. A 2017 study from the National Institute of Mental Health found that people with social anxiety show heightened activity in the amygdala, the region responsible for detecting threats. This means that even neutral social cues, a change in someone's tone, a brief silence, or a lack of eye contact, can be misinterpreted as signs of rejection. In essence, the brain is overprotecting us, preparing for judgment or humiliation that may never come. This hypervigilance creates a feedback loop. The more we scan for signs of danger, the more tense we feel, and the tenser we feel, the more convinced we become that something is wrong. Over time, our bodies start responding to harmless interactions as though they're emotional emergencies. A simple conversation becomes a performance. Every word feels like it could make or break how others see us. But here's the paradox. The harder we try to manage how others perceive us, the further we drift from genuine connection. When we're busy performing confidence, we lose the ability to be present. Conversations stop being exchanges and become tests. We're terrified to fail. Understanding this is the first step toward healing. Social anxiety isn't a flaw, it's your body's misguided attempt to protect you. Once you begin to see your anxiety not as evidence of inadequacy, but as a signal from a nervous system that has learned to be too alert, everything starts to change. The path to calm isn't about silencing fear. It's about retraining your mind to understand that safety and connection can coexist. Social anxiety is a silent struggle that many of us face. It's not just about being shy or preferring solitude. It's the intense internal fear of judgment, rejection, and not measuring up. It's like carrying an invisible weight every time you interact with others, even when you crave connection. So how do you know if you're dealing with social anxiety and not just being introverted or wanting quiet time? It's important to recognize the signs, as understanding them is the first step toward healing. Here are 12 signs that might help you understand whether what you're experiencing is social anxiety. 1. Overthinking every interaction. You find yourself replaying every conversation in your mind, dissecting each word and gesture, wondering if you said something wrong or came across the wrong way. The thoughts loop endlessly long after the moment has passed, as if your brain is trying to find what went wrong. Psychologists explain that this habit of overanalysis is actually a coping mechanism for anxiety. When the brain anticipates possible rejection or embarrassment, it replays past interactions to feel prepared for future ones. Unfortunately, this mental rehearsal only reinforces self-doubt instead of resolving it. 2. Avoiding eye contact. Making eye contact can sometimes feel like revealing too much of yourself, like letting someone see the nerves you're trying so hard to hide. You might find your gaze drifting downward or toward your phone, searching for safety in distraction. But the more you avoid those small moments of connection, the stronger your fear becomes. Avoidance tells your brain that eye contact is dangerous, reinforcing the very anxiety you're trying to escape. True healing begins when you gently look up, even for a second, and remind yourself that being seen doesn't mean being judged. 3. Physical symptoms. Social anxiety isn't just something that happens in your mind, it shows up in your body too. Your hands might tremble, your heart races, and your breath becomes shallow, as if you're preparing for danger. These sensations come from the body's natural fight or flight response, designed to protect you from real threats. But when triggered by everyday social situations, this response becomes overwhelming. The more your body reacts, the more your mind believes something is wrong. creating a cycle of fear and exhaustion that makes even small interactions feel draining. 4. Canceling plans at the last minute. You might cancel plans with friends or avoid social events altogether, even if you initially agreed to go. The thought of socializing becomes overwhelming as your mind races with fear of judgment. You convince yourself it's easier to stay home, but afterward, the isolation can feel even worse. 5. Self-criticism. You tend to be your own harshest critic. After every social interaction, your mind replays each moment like a scene under a spotlight. You analyze every word, every gesture, wondering if you sounded strange or said too much. Thoughts like, "I should have said this," or "Why did I do that?" echo in your head long after the conversation ends. This relentless inner judgment doesn't help you improve it, only fuels your anxiety, making even small interactions feel heavy. Learning to replace criticism with gentle curiosity can turn self-doubt into self-understanding. 6. Seeking constant reassurance. To calm your anxiety, you might find yourself asking others for reassurance, checking if you said the right thing or looked okay during a conversation. It's an attempt to quiet the constant fear of rejection, but the relief never lasts. Each time you depend on someone else's approval, you unknowingly teach your mind that your own judgment can't be trusted. True confidence begins when reassurance comes from within, not from the reactions of others. 7. Fear of being judged or rejected. One of the core fears of social anxiety is the fear of being judged negatively. You worry about what others think of you, whether you're coming off as awkward, or if they'll reject you. Even in small, harmless social interactions, your mind magnifies the possibility of rejection, making every moment feel like a high-stakes situation. 8. Fear of public speaking or being the center of attention. The thought of speaking in front of others, whether it's a small group or a large audience, can trigger intense anxiety. It's not about being shy, but the fear that you will be judged or humiliated if you say something wrong. This fear can make you freeze, lose your words, or even avoid situations where you might need to speak publicly. 9. Difficulty accepting compliments. When someone compliments you, you might feel uncomfortable or brush it off. The fear is that the compliment is insincere or that you don't deserve it. You might downplay your achievements or appearance because the idea of being praised makes you feel exposed and vulnerable. 10. Social interactions feel like performances. When I interact with others, it often feels like stepping onto a stage, every word rehearsed, every gesture measured. I catch myself analyzing reactions, adjusting my tone and replaying sentences before they're even finished. It's like watching myself from the outside, trying not to make a mistake. But this constant self-monitoring pulls me away from the moment, making real connection almost impossible. 11. Difficulty joining groups or conversations. You may feel paralyzed by the fear of interrupting or saying something wrong in a group conversation. Even when you have something to contribute, the fear of being judged or not fitting in stops you from speaking up. You find yourself standing on the sidelines, watching others connect while you remain on the outside, too afraid to jump in. Worrying about future social situations. The anxiety doesn't stop when the event is over. You constantly worry about upcoming social situations, whether it's a party, a work event, or even a simple dinner. Your mind races, imagining all the ways things could go wrong. This worry leads to avoidance, but it also fuels your anxiety for days or weeks leading up to the event. Social anxiety can feel like standing behind an invisible wall, watching life happen on the other side, but feeling too afraid to step through. I've been there, canceling plans I wanted to keep, overthinking every word I said, but recognizing these patterns is where healing begins. It's not about silencing the anxiety, it's about understanding it. The more you meet it with compassion instead of criticism, the lighter it feels. And that's where the real change starts, when awareness turns into gentle action. The journey toward healing from social anxiety isn't about erasing fear. It's about learning to reinterpret it. For years, I thought that overcoming anxiety meant becoming fearless, that one day I'd wake up, walk into a room full of people, and feel nothing but calm confidence. But the truth is, healing doesn't look like that. It's not the absence of fear, it's the presence of understanding. When we experience social anxiety, our nervous system is overreacting to perceived danger. But what if we could teach our body that connection is not a threat? According to a 2016 study published in Cognitive Therapy and Research, gradual exposure to feared social situations helps the brain relearn safety. In other words, each time we face a situation that triggers anxiety and stay long enough to realize we're safe, we start to rewire the brain's response. This process, called extinction learning, is the foundation of exposure therapy. Healing begins in small, quiet moments. It starts when you choose to stay in a conversation a little longer, even though your heart is pounding. It happens when you make eye contact for one more second, or when you allow yourself to stumble over your words and keep going anyway. These may seem like small acts, but each one tells your nervous system, see, I'm okay. Over time, these tiny victories accumulate, transforming the way your brain associates social situations from danger to safety, from survival to connection. What also changed my perspective was realizing that social anxiety often hides a deeper sensitivity, a profound empathy for others. We read faces, tones, and emotions so intensely because we care. This empathy is not a flaw, it's a strength that, once balanced, can help us connect deeply and authentically. When we stop seeing our sensitivity as weakness, it becomes our greatest source of understanding. Therapists often say healing isn't about removing anxiety, but learning to live kindly with it. As Dr. Kristin Neff reminds us, being human means making mistakes, but also being gentle with yourself when you do. Think of it like comforting a friend who's struggling. You wouldn't judge them for being scared. You'd listen, reassure, and stay beside them. That's what self-compassion is, offering yourself the same patience and care you give others. The key then is not to suppress anxiety, but to make peace with it, to shift from self-judgment to curiosity. Each tremble, each racing heartbeat is your body's way of saying, I'm trying to protect you. Once you see that, the fear starts to lose its grip. Healing happens when you stop fighting yourself and begin listening when you realize that your voice, shaky as it may be, still deserves to be heard. For a long time, I believed that social anxiety meant something inside me was fundamentally broken, that I had to fix myself before I could truly belong anywhere. But I've come to realize that social anxiety doesn't mean you're flawed. It means you've learned to become hyper-aware in a world that once made you feel unsafe. The same mind that overanalyzes every detail is also deeply empathetic. The same sensitivity that fuels anxiety also allows for profound human connection. Healing from social anxiety isn't about erasing fear, it's about learning to coexist with it, to stop letting fear make decisions on your behalf. According to a 2019 study from the University of Zurich, practices rooted in self-compassion, such as acknowledging your anxiety without judgment, can significantly reduce social fears and shame. When participants replaced self-criticism with self-kindness, their brain activity visibly shifted away from the amygdala, the part that triggers fear, toward areas related to emotional regulation and connection. Compassion, quite literally, rewires the anxious brain. For many of us, social anxiety is tied to control, the endless attempt to manage how others see us. We rehearse conversations, perfect our tone, monitor our expressions, all in the hope of being accepted. But true connection doesn't happen through control or perfection. It happens through authenticity. The moments we think make us look weak, the trembling voice, the nervous laughter, the awkward pause, are often the ones where people see our humanity most clearly. The truth is, no one relates to flawless people. They relate to those who are real, vulnerable, and brave enough to show up anyway. Healing also means redefining success. It's not about never feeling anxious again. It's about progress showing up even when the fear is still there. Some days you'll feel confident and open. Other days you'll shrink back into the safety of silence. That's not failure. That's growth. Every time you walk into a room despite the fear, every time you speak even when your voice shakes, you're teaching your brain a new truth. I can handle this. I belong here. Maybe that's what social anxiety has been trying to teach us all along, that peace doesn't come from being liked by everyone, but from learning to like yourself. Because once you do, the world begins to feel a little less threatening, and connection starts to feel possible again. You don't have to silence your anxiety to belong. You only have to stop silencing yourself. Healing starts when you allow yourself to exist fully, imperfectly, and without apology. Maybe healing doesn't mean erasing fear. Maybe it's about showing up anyway, even when your heart races. Social anxiety doesn't define you. It simply reminds you that you care deeply about connection. Each small step you take, a glance, a word, a breath, is progress. If this message resonates with you, share it with someone who might need it too. Let's remind each other, being seen, even imperfectly, is where healing begins.